Batool, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was speaking all the time.
Oh, really?
Okay, interesting. Okay,
Yeah, now we hear you. So just please, if you could introduce us to yourself.
yeah. So just want to mention, if you got any problem accessing the Google Doc, or just let us know, because we're going to use it again within the breakout room. And it's very, very interesting to see people from different type disciplines, also different regions within Africa, pharmacy, pediatrics, medical biochemistry, health policy, public health, governance. Really, really interesting, and so nice to meet you all. Also, a lot of these tools that people keep adding, I have never used it, so probably I'm going to experiment with it after the call. And yeah, let's just start. Just to mention everything, all the slides, all the materials I'm going to share, make it open so you can actually not just download it, but you can also reuse it if you find it useful. So start. Oh, that's not slideshow. So just a little bit intro about myself. Do you see the slides, by the way?
Yeah, we can see them.
Okay, brilliant. So just very short intro about myself. Just want to fix that. The Zoom sort of bar is covering everything for me. Yeah, so just very short intro about myself. I am Batool Almarzouq. I am Saudi, based in the UK, today speaking from London. I work in the Alan Turing Institute in a project called AI for Multiple Long-Term Conditions Research Support Facility. I am by training computational biologist, but I do a lot of sort of project around open science. I advocate for open science in different regions, particularly within the Middle East or Arabic-speaking countries. I founded the Open Science Community Saudi Arabia, where we try to contextualize open science practices in the region. I also been contributing to different sort of group, like the Turing Way, Open Life Science, which you're going to see a lot of the materials that I'm using today actually coming from these communities. I'm based in Liverpool. I'm also affiliated with the University of Liverpool. I did my PhD there. So if you have any question about Liverpool, do let me know. I also sort of do consultation or work within an open science working group within the International Association of Universities. Yeah, so if you have any questions about this, please do ask. I think before I start and introduce or define what is open source, I want to address some sort of misconception that people usually have about open source. They always think that open source is the same as free software. So I had my friend who came to me and she showed me this software that she thought it's an open source software, and she wanted me to look into it because she can't sort of do the analysis. But it turned out that software is not actually an open source, but a free software. So, so you can have a free software, and software that you can download it online, but the code and how it's being designed, like the code that designed that software, is not open. And that's you can have it free, but it's not an open source software. And there's really a huge difference between free software and open source. And the way that we actually collaborate on an open source project, the best practices like version control, which I'm going to go into it later, is dramatically different between free software and open source software. And what we try to advocate for within open science is open source software. Also, open source software can have a business model. And we're going to go into we're not going to go into business models, but we're going to go into examples about open source. And a lot of these open source software, you're going to see huge companies that work and has a business model based on open source. They don't sell the software. For example, they sell services around the software. There's different sort of things, and we're going to go into it a bit later. So just to give a little bit of introduction about the open source movement. It's really a new movement that started in the 90s, probably before you were born, some of you. And I'm not going to go into the history about the movement itself, but there is very, very interesting YouTube documentary that you can access, and I'm gonna add the link to it later, probably in the Google Doc, and you can also search it in YouTube. It goes a lot into how the open source movement started and how it used to be Microsoft all over anything within the internet and within the software sort of circle, and how open source started from a person called Linus, and this is the creator of Linux, which we're gonna get into it. There is also a book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, and Eric Raymond is one of these founders as well about the open source movement. He's not, he's a misogynist, so he's not like someone that you can, he's not the best example, but he written very, very extensively about the open source movement. The book itself has a lot of technical jargon, so if software is not your thing, you might find it a bit difficult, but there's a lot of summaries from the book, and it marked one of these very important sort of books that defined actually the open source movement. Yeah, so examples about open source softwares. Actually, open source softwares around us in many of the machines that we have around us. For example, all these high performance computers, HPCs that we have sometimes in universities and clusters use Linux, which is an open source. Sometimes your fridge, your phone use a lot of an open source, like Android, for example, use an open source operation system. Databases around us, a lot of the databases that actually save data is also created using open source. AI library, artificial intelligence. So a lot of these libraries that people use, like PyTorch, TensorFlow, all of these in open source. And as I mentioned, you'll see a lot of open source projects around us. I see there's a few people who just joined, so I'm gonna post the link to the Google Doc again in the chat, just in case. So for the people who just joined, you're gonna see the Google Doc. If you can add your name to it, it would be fantastic. And if you have any difficulty accessing it, just let us know. So what is an open source? We spoke a lot about open source. Open source, we call the project an open source when not you can view it, but you can also use it, modify it, distribute the project for different purposes. So for example, so it means if Linux is an open source, which is an open source, it means I can go take Linux, change some of the code, improve it, and create a new sort of software that based in Linux, and it's citing Linux, it says that it's taken from Linux, and distribute it. But I can't, and I'm going to go into licenses. If you created something based on an open source project, there is conditions. So sometimes you can't actually use it. You can't like sell it, for example, and that depends on the license that you use. So with licenses, we have something called permissive licenses, which basically like MIT, which allow you to, so a lot of the AI, for example, libraries that we have, like PyTorch, NumPy, TensorFlow, all of these use what we call, I'm not going to go into much details, but I want to make that sort of differentiation because it's very, very important. It's used for something similar to permissive license like MIT, which means I can come, do a derivative, or create something based on that open source project, and I can make that new project private if you use a permissive license. However, if you use in something like GPL-like license, anything that you create from that open source project, you have to make it open. And that's why Linux, for example, is using GPL license, which means any sort of another operation system that you create has to be also open source. You can't sort of make it a private or use it commercially. if that makes sense. And I'm probably in level 2, I'm going to go into a little bit more explanation what that looked like. I'm going to show you some project in GitHub, which I'm going to go into it, how people use this project differently. And I think for scientists or researchers, they have to know sort of the basic in copyright, how we making sort of our code, our research open, but also in responsible way, what sort of license we are using in that respect. Okay, so I mean, the question probably that a lot of people ask, why do we care about open source? Why would I actually, I'm not a coder, I'm not sort of someone who did computer science, but why would I care to go and engage with an open source? So there's a lot of benefit that comes from open source. A lot of these I've taken it from the Turing Way, which is a huge and a fantastic resource if you want to get to know more about open source. But also some of these actually does summarize sort of my experience with open source. Within open source, you can really improve your existing skill. It doesn't have to be coding. Sometimes you have skills in graphic design or writing and organizing. There is a lot you can put it in a practice by engaging within open source projects. And also it can a lot advance your career, because when you engage with open source, you also create a portfolio for yourself. So you're making, thank you for adding the link to the Turing Way in the chat. You can also have, you not just create a portfolio, but you demonstrate your technical ability, your reputation. So you end up having this sort of portfolio that you can add it to your CV, and it shows your ability and how you contributed to different open source projects. What also you do within this sort of contribution, you meet a lot of people who have similar interests. And I think that's one of the things that draw me a lot into open source, because there's a lot of networking within open source, and there's a lot of welcoming communities. So you keep like going back to the community, and this sort of connection, it really help you also, again, advance your career and expand more and more and learn more. What also you can find why people do care about open source, because they do find mentors, and you can teach others because you work with different people in a shared project. It means you have to explain how things you do it, you have to document, care about best practices. You can ask people for help, and that sort of active learning and teaching, it's really sort of very fulfilling activity to everyone involved. So engaging with an open source doesn't mean that you have to be someone who come from computer science sort of experience, but you can learn a lot from just going and just asking a question within an open source project. Like you can open an issue and say like, can I ask this question? And you get to meet a lot of people through an open source project. In level 2, I'm gonna give example for some sort of internships program that exists worldwide, that actually do provide sort of opportunity, paid opportunity for people coming from underrepresented community to engage within an open source project. Again, reason why people would like to make their own project, let's say, so that's you engaging in someone else open source project. But here, you also, if you have some sort of coding experience or some sort of analysis that you've used into your research, making that code actually or your work open source, you get a lot of benefit, because it's making your work available to reuse, make it easier to others to incorporate into their research. Also, you invite contribution from around the globe. They can fix bugs, they can improve your coding, and that sort of contribution. That's how many of these open source projects actually expanded, because of the contribution that comes from different parts of the world with different experience. You also get feedback about your work. And there is also this argument about accountability, because any software developed using government money should be open source by default. If the public has paid for that sort of development, they have the right also to make use of it. So again, any government sort of funded sort of research, there is this argument that should be actually an open source because it has to be benefiting the whole society. So probably the next question is, okay, I would like to experiment with open source, but where can I find this open source project? There's different places or websites that you can find open source project and sort of understand more about it. So there's a GitHub, there's GitLab, there's Bitbucket. However, what I'm gonna focus in today sort of lecture and also the next lecture, which is going to be level 2 sort of lecture, we're going to be focusing more in GitHub because GitHub is like the most sort of popular website that people use to contribute to an open source project. The common sort of things between all of these three websites that they use something called Git underneath. And I'm going to sort of differentiate between Git and GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, because there's a huge, huge difference between the two. You can use Git without using any of these three software, but you can't use these three software without using Git. So, and we will go into that sort of technicality more in detail probably in the next sort of lecture, but I'm going to give you also a bit of background here. So Git, you can imagine Git is a software. It's not a website. So that's the software used for version control system. It's free, it's an open source. So Git is the software that's an open source. And the reason why we use Git, because Git give a lot of advantage in terms of tracking the history of the open source project and also making contribution way, way, way easier. Whereas GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, these are just websites that host and share Git project remotely. So just also to make that more probably clear, Git is something that been created way before GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. And the person who actually created Git is the same person who created Linux. So he was actually working in the Linux operating system. This is Linus, the one who invented Linux. And he was working in this Linux operation system, and he was very sort of confused, and he wanted a system where he can go back in time, change the code, come back in the future, change the code, and track all the changes. And also, if someone made any contribution, he can know who made it and how it made and how it affected the history without sort of messing up the system. So he wrote this software, which he also made it in open source. And the software is usually used in the terminal. So this is the black screen that a lot of coders actually use when they sort of do programming. But what happens in the 2005 or 6, people came in and they tried to, rather than everyone going and using Git through their sort of black screen or terminal, they created a website that can host these GitHub or these projects remotely. So to make it easier for people actually to contribute to open source and to use that version control of Git. This might seems a bit confusing how Git get to do with open source and GitHub. And it will make more sense once we actually start using GitHub itself in the next level. So don't worry if it seems a lot confusing to you. So this is basically the website of GitHub, and this is like my portfolio, as I mentioned. You can see it shows you, it has this sort of heat map, which shows you which days, so these are the months, and each sort of square is basically a day in the year. If it is green, it means that you've coded or contributed or did something in that day. So it shows the sort of portfolio activity, and also it highlights what sort of open source project that you contributed to. And again, this is another portfolio that actually can help and advance your career. I see a few people probably having a difficulty within the Google Doc, and I'm happy to help once we go into the breakout room to sort of debug that problem. Again, one of the compelling reason why people actually use Git, use GitHub, use open source is collaboration. And as you know, open science also, like one of it is major and important values, collaboration and transparency. And Git and GitHub really offer that advantage by making things more, making collaboration way, way easier. And also adding that layer of transparency. I just want to explain also why we actually, we can always have a project that is basically, and we can make that code open and available and add a license to it, but without using Git, without using version control system. Why do we actually use a version control system? So bear with me. I'm gonna try to explain why we use actually a version control system. So anyone, and I believe most of you here have written previously papers, and you end up like you work in that paper and you go through it line by line, and then you finish it and you call that doc final doc. Like that's the final document, I'm pretty sure. And I give it either my colleague or my supervisor, and they go and make all these suggestions and changes. So I go back and go through these sort of suggestions, and I sort of incorporate a lot of them, and I end up creating a new folder, a new file called this time final/revision to doc. Like this is, yeah, the final after revision. Then I go back and give it back to my colleague and my supervisor, and he look into it and go, oh, that's fantastic, but there's this tiny things and this things and this thing. So I end up go back and apply all his comment, and I end up with a new document with, I call it final.final, and then I go back, give it back to him. And again, when you work in a paper or any project, you end up having a lot of feedback. You end up with people asking you to make suggestion, or they incorporate their sort of changes. But at the same time, you get sent that document in your email, you end up with like 30 versions of exactly the same document. And that's not good. Not good, not because it's sort of you have this 30 sort of document with exactly the same paper, but with different changes. But because if you want to go back to one of these documents to change something or bring it back, it's hard to know which of these 30 document has that change and which document being made, but which one made the changes. It just is extremely messy. So the reason why we use version control in open source, because open source, we have a lot of collaboration. You have a lot of people making changes, fixing bugs. And if you don't know how to go back into that code and know who made that changes, how it affected downstream code, you will end up with trillion like folder just with the same sort of code. And we don't want to do that within open source. We try to advocate for things that are more effective. And that's the reason why Linus came up with the version control system, or what we call it Git. So Git basically, or Git is one of these software that we call it version control system, and it allows you to track the history of the same document. So the same document, you can go back in time and see what changes you made, who made it, and go back into the future and know who, like, and make new changes. It's so easy. You don't have to have multiple documents of the same thing. It's one document where you can track the history. And that's very important in open source, because it's one of these best practices that we use within open source. So again, it makes collaboration way easier, because this time you can, rather than you go in between all of these different documents, you actually have version 1, version 2 within the same document. You can go back in time and see what sort of changes that be made. And this will actually be more obvious and clear in our second, again, lecture, because we're going to create an open source project, and we're going to track and see the history and go back in time. And we're also going to see other sort of open source. We're going to look at them and see what sort of been changed in their history. So that's going to be more and more obvious. Again, as I mentioned, version control system or Git, it's really, it's also one of the ways, so some people who are not coding, actually, they use it to write, let's say, to write their book or their sort of papers. And the reason why also it's very, very useful in writing, because even writing by itself is a collaborative practice. And you also have a backup. If you're using Git, you're using version control, it's going to have a backup. So even if your computer just restarted or your computer stopped, or you did not click on that save within your Word document, you're not going to lose anything because there is a backup in any version control system. And I think that's really, really important. When I was working in my thesis, I ended up losing one chapter because I wasn't using version control. I was writing, and at some point, just my computer decided to restart, and I lost all of that I've written. So version control is very, very efficient, even if you're not doing coding. I'm going to just introduce this sort of terminology that we use within open source. It's called repository. So this jargon, just want to introduce it because you're going to hear it a lot in the future. And repository means a project. So you can think of any, if you had someone saying that I'm working this repository, it means that they work in this project. And we're going to actually be creating a repository in this session. So you will see how we can create a project, and we call it repository inside GitHub. As I mentioned, revision and versions is very, very easy. Go back in time. Very easy, change things, you delete things. It's so fun when you work in a version control system. And also, you don't have to, you can be your own collaborator, but can also have different people working at the same document at the same time, and it doesn't affect anything. It's really magic because you can work exactly at the same time at the same document without having multiple versions, people sending you 3 different documents at the same time, and you try to merge all these changes. That's not the case when you're using a version control system. So what we will be doing now, we're going to actually try and create an account in GitHub. And after we create an account in GitHub, we're going to try and log in. And once we log in, what we're going to do is we're going to create a repository in GitHub. Okay. Once we create a repository in GitHub, we're going to celebrate that. And we're going to go into the breakout room. If someone could not create a repository, you can try to help within the breakout room. And I'm also going to visit different breakout room to make sure everything is very clear. And if anyone is struggling with the GitHub or with the Google Doc. Once we have that, we're going to be celebrating because that's going to be your very first repository. After that, what we're going to do is I would like for everyone to go into GitHub and look into projects that align with your discipline. So something if you're working in microbiology, you can look in projects that actually that an open source software that you do with microbiology, for example, and add them to the Google Doc. Just want you to sort of explore GitHub more and familiarize yourself with GitHub, because what we're going to be doing in the next session is actually we're going to go more into GitHub. We're going to do more fancy things in GitHub, if that makes sense. How does that feel? Okay, I see in the chat that some people having a problem with the Google Doc, but don't worry. I'm gonna try to go into the room and try to help you around it. So just to show you what GitHub, so GitHub looks like this. Let me just take this out. My computer is giving away. So I want everyone to go into GitHub. Okay. So I've added the URL for GitHub in the chat. And what I want you to do, I want you to sign up. I'm going to sign out because I am already logged in. Sign out, and hopefully I can sign in easily later on. So I think most of you are going to have something look like this. Okay. And it shows you like what GitHub, what it looks like, and what you want to do. Again, any work you do in GitHub is free of charge. You don't have to pay anything. And by the way, GitHub used to be owned by a different company, but now it's unfortunately owned by Microsoft. Yeah. So what I want you to do is go and sign up. You will have some questions. So it can ask you, welcome to GitHub. What's your email? So you would like to add your email and continue. It says to me it's invalid, already taken, because I've already created an account using it. So I can't do it. So I'm going to try and add another sort of email. Just something that, this is not my email, but I'm just trying to. Well, that's already also taken. Interesting. There's so many Batools in the world. Okay, continue. Then it's going to ask you to create a password. So create a password for yourself and make sure it's at least 15 characters or at least 8 characters that include numbers and lowercase letters. Oh, if you already have a GitHub, you don't have to create another one. But I just want to make sure that people who don't have a GitHub, they are like they have a chance and time to create one. Okay. But if you already have one, please just sign in, log into your account. You don't have to create a new one. So it's then going to ask you about your username. Again, you can choose whatever username. The username is very important because that's how people are going to tag you inside GitHub. So it can be your name and it can be anything. And then I think that's it. Email preferences and continue. As easy as that. But if you struggle, do let me know, because sometimes signing up to GitHub can be painful, and I've seen people struggling a bit, and the system has been changed a few times. If you manage to create your account, just go and sign in. And I'm going to sign in now with my account, and this is my account. So I've added my email address and password. Sometimes it's going to ask you to verify it using your mobile phone. It didn't used to do that in the past, but they have a lot of security problems these days. So yeah, I'm just gonna sort of confirm your account delivery settings. This is not something that you will have it every time. It just asks you in certain time. Ask me later. Anything, just ask me later, please. So now you have your own, you should be logged in into your account. So what I want everyone to do, I want to give everyone a chance to, I'm going to pause for a few seconds just to give everyone a chance to be able to do that. Okay. And then I'm going to walk you through how you can create a repository. If that makes sense. I see a few people just join in. Let me just add that link to the chat. For people who just joined in the chat, if you can add your name to the Google Doc here, add your your city, the country, your social handles would be good. And then what we're trying to do right now is actually creating an account in GitHub. So if you can go to github.com and create an account, would be wonderful. And if you did struggle with creating an account, do let me know. We're gonna go into the breakout room so everyone can help. We can help each other in the breakout room. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a few seconds to allow people to go through the process of signing up to GitHub if they don't have an account already.
So I think we could ask if anyone has an issue. Maybe you could just raise your hand. Then if you have a question, So Paul says that I have issues in creating an account.
Yeah. Paul, can you expand on the problem a bit?
Yes, thank you very much. I've tried 2 times as you were facilitating. Then it says that I should enter my email, which I did, and another button because I'm using my Android phone. And instead of clicking the continue, but the continue button was not going through.
Oh. Okay, so you're trying to do that using your iPhone, and when you try to click and the continue, it's not going
Yes,
through.
yes.
And you can't share screen to show me because you're using your Android, right?
Yes, I'm using my Android phone.
Okay, okay.
Or I want to ask, is
Yeah.
it better used on the laptop so that I switch on to my laptop straight away?
Yeah, I don't use actually. I mean, there is a GitHub app as well in iPhone. I don't know if it is in Android. I would imagine there is an app. So rather than you go into the browser in your phone, there is an app that you can download it, and it's GitHub. You can use it to create an account, I would imagine, but I don't use it very often, honestly. Only I get notification on it, and I usually use GitHub in my Mac, in my laptop.
Okay, let me try my my laptop.
Yeah,
So if
please,
I
if you
have any issues, I'll let you know immediately.
yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
thank you, thank you.
And anyone having an issue, it'd be nice if we can share screen so I can see the issue and I can help you debug it. I see that someone else in the chat also having a problem.
Yeah, Yavoni.
If I
Okay,
wonderful.
Zoe is okay. Yavoni, if you could unmute and explain exactly what is your issue? Okay, Howard, it's apparently working for him. That's good.
Yeah. So Howard seems to have already an account, and he's adjusting that. If
I have
Chrome
a
is not
question.
working, try to yeah.
So Tony,
I have a
okay, you can
question,
go ahead.
please. Yeah, I'm trying to create my account, and it's asking me how many members are in my team. What do I answer? Is it just me,
You
or
just
I should say I have team members?
skip all the question that is not compulsory. So that's I think that
Okay,
question is not compulsory, so just to skip it. Say, oh, just don't fill it in.
all right.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
can
thank you.
see also Khadija. Khadija has her hand raised. Please go ahead, Khadija.
Okay, I'm still having issues, including my name in the documents. I don't know, do I need to download Google Doc or something before I can access
No, you
the
don't
document?
have to download anything, Khadija. So did you say that you could not add your name here?
Yes, I couldn't.
So you can't write. I can because I can do also add your name, but I just want to know how you. So what's the problem? Do you not able to write in the document, or do you not able to access?
To add my name, I could open it, but I couldn't
Type.
edit. Yes, I couldn't type.
I think if you're on your phone, one of the participants said that there's a pen icon. I think at the bottom left that you should click on before you could write. You're using your phone, Khadija?
Yes, I am.
So just look at the bottom right. There should be an icon of a pen.
Okay.
And when you click on it, you should be able to add your name.
Okay, I'll try that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Samira also has her hand raised. Samira, go ahead.
So I created my account on GitHub, and then I created the repository, but it's not giving me this celebration. It just
Okay. Yeah, don't worry. So you've done a few steps ahead, Samira. That's fantastic.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not going to give you a celebration, and that's me like creating in the slide myself. So you're not going to see it. Yeah, you're not going to see this.
Oh,
This is just me sort of, yeah, celebrating it. But that's
okay.
fantastic. I mean, you've done few steps ahead. That's really great. Because I was
Okay.
going to go through how to create an account with everyone. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you. Regarding those who cannot edit the Google Doc, as I think I wrote that on the comments, in the chat, the pen is on the right bottom. When you click it, then you're able to edit the document.
Okay. Does it, yeah, I don't use Google Doc in my in my phone. But can everyone try who have any problem, as Samira mentioned, accessing the Google Doc on their phone by clicking on this sort of pen icon? And thank you, Samira, for that.
Thank you.
That's super useful.
I think someone had their hand raised, but it's now lowered. Okay. Ahmed, if you have a GitHub account, just log into it. And yeah, there is a Google Doc. I'll just share the link now again. Just please write your name at the beginning of the doc. So does anyone else have an issue, or is someone still couldn't create an account in GitHub or log into their account?
And thank you for everyone who's written in the chat that they've managed to create a GitHub account. Oh, fantastic. Dester as well, he managed to create it.
That's great. That's great.
Anyone still having a problem? Okay. In that case, I'm just conscious of the time. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you how to create a GitHub repository, and then we're gonna go into the breakout room, and I'm gonna pass by every breakout room just to make sure if anyone having still problem with signing up to the GitHub, I can try and debug that problem. And it's wonderful. I see a lot of people like, yeah, right in the chat, they managed to create a GitHub account. That's fantastic. Okay, so if you actually did sign in, you logged into your account, you're gonna have here your username, and here you're probably gonna have your name. If you don't have it, it's fine. You can edit it later. I'm gonna show you how to do that in the future. But what I want you to do is go into this icon, the plus icon, and say new repository. Okay. Do let me know if you don't see that. Okay, there's someone still struggling. Don't worry, Hafsa. I will, once we go into the breakout room, I'm gonna try to debug it with you. It's easy if I can see your screen so I can help you. And probably before we start also level 2, I'm gonna do a pre-session where we make sure like no one joining that session have any problem with the GitHub. And if someone is not able to add their name to the Google Doc, don't worry, I can look it up. I'm gonna add your name. But also probably for my next session, it's gonna be a lesson for me not to use Google Doc and use something else. So it's easy and accessible to everyone. Okay, let me. Okay, if you clicked in the plus icon, and you clicked in a new repository, you will see this. Okay, and here basically it asks you what's the repository name, and by repository it means what's the project name. You can call this project anything right now. You can actually change it in the future. So I can say this is the African Hebrew Network session. I can call it anything, and it will say if that name is available or not. Okay, so you can call your repository or your project anything. It also asks you to add description. Again, this is optional. It's best to add it at this stage. I'm not very concerned if you add in any description, but here is the part that I think is very, very important. It asks you, do you want a public or private? Because actually now you can also create the private repository at the very, very beginning, and then you can make it open. Once you're comfortable with making it open, a lot of open source projects, if you working in some sort of research, you can actually start and making it private at the very beginning, but then making it open once you publish. And there's many ways to go about it. In our case, we want to make it public from the very beginning, okay? And also, I want to check this add README file. You can think about README file, which we're going to expand more into it in the next session, is your sort of your cover. So that's where you'll find you can add all the information about the project with the contributors. So that's the README file. Anyone who's going to come to your project or repository, the very first thing they're going to see or read is going to be this README file. Okay, so let's check that in. After that, it's going to ask you about .gitignore. You don't have to choose anything about this right now. I want you to focus more on the next question, which is choose a license. Choose a license. This is the license that I was discussing with everyone and said, like, depending on the license that you choose, your project and how it's going to be used in the future, it change. In this case, we're going to go with the MIT license because MIT license, as I mentioned, is permissive license. So that means anyone actually will be able to reuse my code, including myself or including some collaborators in the future. And they don't have to make their new code using similar license as the previous one. Again, if you use GBL, it means anyone who's gonna create a code based on your code or based on your project or repository have to make their also repository GBL license. So with MIT, it doesn't have, it's more flexible, if that makes sense. So it's less restriction. Okay, and once we do that, don't worry about this one. I don't think that you're gonna have this one in your, it's very likely you're not gonna have it. This is just because I've installed some sort of apps within GitHub. You wanna click and create a repository. It will take a few seconds, and now we have our repository. So this is the repository. This is the name for the repository. This is the README file. This is the license. And I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable actually having an account in GitHub and creating their repository. And you will see in the repository how many one is watching this. You'll see the activity. You can change the about, like you can link it to a website. You can change a lot of the settings, but I don't want to go into too much overload in this session, so I'm not going to go into the tiny, like the gritty when it comes to like how you use GitHub. If you manage to create your very first repository, congratulations, because that's huge, really huge. And if you did not manage, it should be fine. Once we go into the breakout room, I'm going to try to help everyone to sort of debug any problem that they happen. And if you manage to actually create your first repository, I would be very thankful if you can add also the chat, so I would know how many one actually have been able to create their repository. So that's about repository. What we're going to do in the breakout room, we're going to make sure that everyone able to create a repository. And we're also going to make sure that everyone is able to go into GitHub. So you click in the GitHub again, and you click in this type / to search. So you can search about anything in GitHub. Let's say I am computational biologist, so I'm interested about things related to bioinformatics. So I write bioinformatics, I click enter, and it showed me a lot of projects related to bioinformatics. So I want you to sort of explore GitHub, explore the project that exists. For example, this is biocontainers, which is very, very popular bioinformatics project. You'll see a lot of people working on it. If you click on this, which says 2000 commits, you will be able to see actually the whole history. It's just taking a few seconds. You'll see the whole history of the people who actually, so here is the name of the person, here when they changed the code and what sort of change they made. And so you see different people actually working in this project in different time. So someone just made changes 4 days ago. Someone made changes just last month. And you can see once you click on it also, you'll see what the changes they made. So this is what they changed. The red bar is what they removed. The green one is what they've added. And you can actually see all of that very, very easily. Again, I don't expect you in this session to be able to understand GitHub, but I want you to be able to explore and familiarize, like be more familiar with the GitHub at this stage. I see that someone has his hand.
Nidal, I think it's Nidal.
Yeah, Nidal.
I thought that my screen is freezing because I didn't see the project that you are talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna post a link to it.
Okay.
So this is the history of it. You can see the history, but the repository itself is this one. And this is, yeah, so try and click on it. That's the one. So what I want you to do is, oh, fantastic. Few people have already created the repository. That's fantastic, Michael and Modester. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Someone is asking, is there any specific name we should give our repository? And thank you. Yeah, you can actually choose any name that you like, as long as it says, it gives you this green light saying this name is available. You're not able to create a repository that you already have similar name previously created. But in your case, I think whatever name you're gonna give is gonna be unique. Okay, any questions before we go into the breakout room? Okay, so again, what we're gonna do in the breakout room, we're gonna go into this. Oh, I see a screenshot.
Sorry, a question before when we go to breakout room. Please, I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
In trying to create the repository, in that time when you were talking about choosing licenses, I went off the network, so I didn't know what to choose. When you say choose a network and add Gitimo, what do I do in that instance?
Sorry, I didn't, I think the sound was not clear for me. Did you say that you created? Yeah, go on.
Yes, I have created the repository, but when you were trying to explain what we are going to do about choosing a license and adding Gitimo, my network, I had a network glitch, so I didn't hear much about what you said there.
Okay, it's fine, don't worry. So what I was trying to say is that, let me just go back to it. Yeah, so I was saying here, when you choose a license, these licenses, some of the will be permissive license, which means flexible license. When I say flexible and permissive license, it means in the future, there's less restriction about how you can build or change the software or reuse the software, if that makes sense, or create derivatives out of the software. Most of the AI libraries, for example, Python AI libraries, use permissive license because it means that other sort of company that can come and actually create derivatives of their code very easily. However, if you're using something like the GNU General Public License, this one is more restrictive. What do I mean by restrictive? This means if in the future someone came and created a derivative of this work, they have also to make it open under the same license. Okay, so it's more restricted. And Linux, for example, which is like the most popular open source operation system we know today, is using this GNU General Public License. We call it GPL. It means that anyone who actually created a derivative of Linux, which now we do have a lot of derivatives in the market, it has to be open. Okay, so that's like the difference between licenses. And I'm going to go into more details about this in the next session. But I think it's really important that as a researcher, I understand how to make my code and my research open but responsibly and according to the need of my research and my community. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. I see that, okay, Samira saying that I've created mine earlier, but did not make it public and didn't mention the license. It's totally fine. Samira, trying to create another one. You can create another one, the same process, but this time make it public and also choose a license at this. Okay, any other questions before we go into the breakout room?
Okay, Batool, thank you very much for your deliberation. I just came a little bit late. I had you talked about Obsidian, and I work in an
yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
I work in an environment where we're thinking of reproducible research. Is it possible to use Obsidian with researchers, or is okay to go ahead with GitHub? Because
Okay.
I started playing with Obsidian recently, but I'm concerned about group of researchers using that platform, log in, and then do their, let's say, write-ups on Obsidian. But I'm not sure if it has those capabilities. Like a group of people have access to the same Obsidian to write their research project. I don't know whether you have any idea.
Okay, so just to give everyone sort of context, in the Google Doc, the question about what's your favorite sort of tool, I've written Obsidian, but we did not go through Obsidian. This is just an icebreaker question that was asking everyone what's their sort of favorite tool. And just to mention about Obsidian, I can expand a bit. So I am also not very, this is something very new for me. Like, it's not something I've been using for years. I've started using it since last December and I found it very effective. But Obsidian functionality is very, very different than GitHub. So both of them, they do different purposes. Obsidian, as far as I understand, and I could be wrong, is not for collaboration. It's just something that I organize my thought into it. And I can actually connect, my Obsidian with GitHub, and that's what I do. I use GitHub as a backup, and everything I change in Obsidian is pushed back to GitHub. You probably know this, but I can also show you my repository that I've created ages ago.
I'm equally using Obsidian in that way. I connect it to GitHub, but like you said, it's important to know that not more than one people can collaborate on Obsidian.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't think you can use Obsidian
Yeah.
for collaboration. I've never used it that way. And yeah, I sort of like even, so this is my Obsidian sort of, yeah. And I basically also make it private because it has a lot of my private notes.
Yeah.
So this is not like something, it's about collaboration.
Exactly.
It's like private notes, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Obsidian is most about like, how to productivity sort of software, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, and how you organize and connect your thoughts together. I've never seen someone using it to collaborate on a book or collaborate on a software. Yeah, but I would
Okay.
be interested if you've seen new sort of use cases for Obsidian.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you for the question. Yeah, Ahmed mentioned that he used it as personal knowledge management. Yeah, that's very true.
I think Joseph has a question, Batool, in the chat.
To create a repository, we use DS space in Venue and so on. GitHub is of the same. So, so repositories, that's a very, very good question. So there's a lot of, so Zenodo as well as a repository, there's different type of repository, but GitHub is basically mostly about coding, and you can also sort of version controller with different system. But these sort of repository, I'm not sure they are sort of version control. And I think most of these you can actually connect it to GitHub, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't used, I mean, DSS Space is and in Venue, I think in Venue is the infrastructure that been created for Zenodo. And you probably know better than me, Joseph, because I'm not like a frequent user of this. GitHub mainly, I mean, it's being created to host Git, whereas DSS Space and in Venue, I don't think they have any sort of connection to Git and version control. So I think the use cases for InVenue and DS Space is very different than GitHub, because also you can think of any sort of repository, general purpose repository or discipline specific repository, but these mostly to archive paper, to archive certain output into it. But it's not something that is connected to Git, which is a version control, if that makes sense. Does that make any sense, Joseph? Okay, yeah. So the use case for both is very, very different. And sometimes you can link. So what I do, for example, Zenodo, I link my GitHub repository in GitHub. I archive it in Zenodo, if that makes sense. Oh, Khadija had also created the repository. Fantastic. I'm so happy seeing a lot of people actually manage to create their repository. So I'm conscious of the time, and I want to allow time to go into the breakout room and be able to chat to each other. What we're going to do in the breakout room, depending on what room you are in. So before you go into the room, do know what room you are going into because it comes in the screen. Try to explore a project in GitHub and add a link to the repository that you created, like the one that you created right now, and also any interesting project that you find. Let me just say, also add the link to the project you created. Okay, so let me, Manuel, would you be able to help me create in the breakout room?
Yeah, and how many number of people you prefer in each breakout room? 3?
Yeah, 3 in each one.
Okay, Emmanuel, would you be able to do that?
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Manuel.
Okay.
Yeah, I see. Thank you, Manuel.
So now I guess every one of you should be able to see the room that they've been assigned to. and then you can just join. Great. Yeah.
There are few people still in. If anyone having a problem with moving to their breakout room, do let us know. We can move you.
Yeah. It's Howard and Sutoni. Do you guys are not able to see your breakout rooms, or what seems to be the issue?
I'm not seeing a breakout room on my screen.
Oh, it says that you are in room 6.
Room
actually.
6, yeah.
Let me try and move you to room 5 and the room. Oh, it's room 6. What about now? Do you see your room?
Sutoni and Howard? Okay, Sutoni is okay. Howard? I'm not sure if you can hear us, Howard, because okay. I'm not sure what the issue is with Howard.
Okay, it should be fine.
Okay.
I feel like I've given a lot of technical jargons. It might be confusing for people who had. I feel like I've confused them.
No, actually, I thought that people would have been more confused than, like, I think people have managed well. I can see many, everything at the beginning is sort of difficult and scary, but then I think what you're doing is learning by doing is really good, because you have to sort of dive into it to learn.
Yeah, I was hesitant to add about license and about like going into what repository means, but I thought that, I mean, it's very important concept in open source that they should be do it from the level 1, because you can't define open source without defining license. And that will make open source an open source. But yeah, I see Muhammad came back. Hi, Muhammad. Do you have a problem with joining the rooms?
He's still connecting to audio. Ernest has asked for help at room 4. Can you join, Batool? I think you'll be able to help. Yeah. Emmanuel.
Yeah.
So how was the session? I think these are things that you like, right?
Yeah. I remember when I was doing my sales, I actually attended a training on GitHub, how to use GitHub.
Really?
I already have an account. It was by I think on AceNet in Canada. So
okay.
that I never really dived deep into it. I mean, it was interesting learning all those technical stuff.
Yes. Me as well. I've never used it, to be honest. I've heard a lot about it, but
yeah, it's an interesting platform, but if you're not familiar with coding, you may get confused when you go there.
Yeah, but I feel like it's the future. These things are going to be the sort of musts in the near future.
Yeah. Some projects to kind of require you to know about it, because that is what so it's good that you at least know the basics of how to go about the platform.
And I'm happy that people were able
like
to
OSF it's like create the
you were breaking up, Emmanuel.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so I just stopped talking. I was trying to say that a platform like OSF is kind of similar to some of these version control platforms where you can kind of check the various updates that you are doing and collaborate. But I think it has a more friendly user interface than maybe GitHub kind of.
GitHub. Okay.
GitHub, when you go there, you think this is a platform for coders. For programmers.
Yeah.
You kind of. So maybe that's
But like it's interesting to hear Batool saying that like even if you're not into coding, you could use it.
Yeah.
So
like
apparently not, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've come across some projects that use the GitHub for collaboration, not programming projects, like normal projects. Let's say researchers collaborate, but they use GitHub to do the changes in the documents, to monitor the various documents that they've created. So I think there is a way to use GitHub when you have, let's say, a Linux platform or window where you can just create changes to the document and it will just go there like she has connected it to Obsidian. It's an interesting platform for collaboration. If you know how to use it, it's very, very useful. It's very, very useful, extremely useful.
Yeah, I think maybe we could ask Batool if like for the level 2, we could all work towards a certain project. I think Howard
maybe add changes, individually add changes.
Yes. And then it could be like published in the end or something. It would be interesting.
I think Howard just joined.
Howard, yeah. So Howard, I think you're having issues joining.
Yes, technically I'm having issue joining. My network is quite disturbing.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I'll move you to room 1. So please, you should have now like a message saying that you could join room 1 and then click join. Is it still not working? Howard? Howard, do you see a prompt telling you to join the breakout room?
I think, like he said, he's having a lot of connection issues because I saw he was going in and out of the meeting.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
And so
yeah.
He's been rejoining as many times as he has gone off, which is quite impressive.
Yes.
It's unfortunate. Systems in Africa sometimes.
Yeah. It's really painful. And yeah, so I think we could discuss with Batool like the possibility. Oh, we have Jocelyn. I think.
Does she have access to the video phone?
I don't know. Hello, Jocelyn. I'm not sure if this is the first time you joined, Jocelyn, or were you able to attend some of the session?
Hello, sorry, I'm just joining.
Okay.
Is the session ending or I'm lost?
It is sort of about like we're in the almost towards the end of the session, but I will share with you a link to a Google Doc where you could write your name in.
How come I didn't have this on my calendar? I'm just seeing the notification on the email, but on the calendar it was not there.
Oh, that's strange. That's really strange.
Yeah, maybe there's a problem somewhere. I'll recheck. Okay, thank you. I'm waiting for the link.
Okay, I sent the link in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think you could go through the recording when it's finished so that you could catch up with everything.
All right.
But then it's interesting. Are you using Google Calendar and it didn't show?
Yes,
Or
I'm
are you
using
using the
Calendar.
document?
I'm using Google Calendar. There was a day again. Let me just check my diary. When
Okay.
I saw maybe there were changes on the dates, because on Monday the 13th, I had also an entry in my diary on open data, but unfortunately it was also not showing on my Google Docs.
Yeah, it was moved.
Oh, it was moved.
Yeah, it was
Oh.
moved to next week. And also this
Okay.
session on open source, it was supposed to be the first week of May, and then it was moved to today. But just please make sure if it shows in your Google Calendar or not.
All right,
'Cause
let me check.
it's supposed
I
to
will
be
recheck.
updated. Okay,
All right,
great.
it's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. I don't know why a lot of people are having issues with the calendar. I'm not sure what the issue is.
I am surprised. I am surprised that people still have issues with it.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's frustrating, to be honest.
yeah, from our end, because you want people to be getting the notifications and updates.
Yes.
And I used to initially send emails out, about the events, the training. But the thing is that the calendar is set to send an email out, I think, a day or two before, and then another notification during the day too. So I don't want to kind of flood their emails with a lot of mails from Aaron. That's why I stopped doing that.
Maybe you should continue doing that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Samira is asking for help, but I don't know where Batool is.
Batool is
in room 4
now. Yeah, so
would you be able to join like room 5? I think you're better at these things than me.
Yeah, I'll be able to join room 5, but I don't know how I'm going to assist, and if I'm in a position to do that too, kind of, because I'm not the facilitator, if I'm being honest. So I could join there and offer some form of help, but we didn't agree on that with Batool. So I don't know.
Okay, so maybe we should wait a bit for Batool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, you see them asking for help. I don't see them asking for help. How do you see that?
It pops up, like there is a notification that pops up and say like this someone at room X is asking for help. You don't see that?
Okay. Then I have to probably update my Zoom or something, because I don't get that.
Oh, that's strange. That's
Yeah,
really
I don't.
strange because
I don't
Batool
get-
saw it, like, and she's also a co-host.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't get that at all.
Okay, I think I'll hop into room 5 and see if it's something that I could help with.
No. If you'd hop in, then it will probably better for me to hop in, because
Okay.
I'm more familiar with it. You said room 5, right?
Room 5, yeah, with Samira and Khadija and Sutoni. Hello, Banjo.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've joined late, so I don't know what is happening.
No worries. So our session today with about open source, and it's sort of towards the end of the session, but please, I've added the link to a Google Doc in the chat. If you could go in and put your name. And I think at this point, it might be better after we finish that you listen to the recording so that you could see everything that was done. But
We'll do
please,
that.
but if you could stay for the Q&A, it would be great, because now everyone is in a breakout room. They're doing an exercise that the trainer asked them to do. but there will be a Q&A and people will be discussing what they did after the breakout rooms, and so you're welcome to stay if you like.
I will do. I will stay because most time the question and the Q&A session is even much more educational. You learn a lot of things and from people's experience.
I agree. It's always very, very nice. Yeah, so it
I
would be
was
great.
actually on the road, so it was difficult for me joining.
No worries at all.
Thank you,
Worries.
Lami.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
You and Emmanuel, you have really tried for this program.
Thank you. It's really nice to hear. We're really happy that you're enjoying it.
I'm enjoying it too, and I'm learning, and I'm discussing with my faculty.
Wow.
Seriously discussing with my faculty members. Because
this
like I said
sometimes
ago, that a group got a grant to organize something on
ethics.
On ethics and reproducibility. So I met the PI and I told him that I'm doing something on open science, and with time I will want to join their group so that we can work together.
Exactly.
And I gave him some ideas, and he quite appreciates the things I told him that I will follow up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This is exactly what we want.
Exactly. I gave him the idea that we should really put it in the curriculum of the university because he's a professor, he's a senior professor. So I want that we should put it in the curriculum of the university so that people start learning from their entry into university. And if it is possible, all faculty members, new entrants into the university, new faculty members to the university should be trained. Let's develop a curriculum, a training manual on open science and reproducibility and ethics, so that everything can come up for new entrants and for the ones that are there, and mainly for postgraduate students.
Yes.
And he seems to see reason with what I am saying. So I told him we will still talk. So this was just yesterday.
You missed something really interesting, Emmanuel. I'm smiling.
I heard the latter part, but I got excited. So yeah, I got quite excited listening to the latter part. So I was like,
Banjo, if you could repeat to Emmanuel what the exciting things that you were just saying, and let me complete smiling and being happy.
Emmanuel, I told Lami that I met a senior professor in my university yesterday. Late last year, they got grant on ethics and reproducibility, and they were conducting seminars and training around the university and another sister university in another part of Nigeria. It was a joint program. So I attended the training session. So in putting what I learned there with what I'm learning here at Open Science, I met the prof and I told him some of my ideas. I told him that in addition to what I learned from their training, I'm already going on Open Science program that I'm going through the training, and I have learned some things. And I gave him an idea that we should develop a curriculum whereby people will start learning reproducibility, open science from the beginning. We should put it in the university curriculum. Maybe there should be a course that is compulsory for everybody on that area, so that people start knowing about it from the beginning. And if possible, new faculty members to the university, it should be part of their training sessions before they finally get into the system. And he said it makes sense that we should talk more. I promised him I will still see him, we will discuss further. And he also said they are writing some materials on something like that, that maybe we'll put things together. So that is what I actually discussed with.
Yeah, that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And thank you for the man you've got, our resource person, the last one, that made me to know that there is open science community in Nigeria. I have joined the link, they have replied, and I'm sure we'll do more things.
That's amazing. Thank you, Banjo, for sharing your experience.
So much. I really appreciate both of you for taking time to do this kind of program.
Thank you. And of course, we also thank our trainers, just like Batool. And I think we'll hand it over to you, Batool.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed when I was passing by the room. I could not go into each room, so I'm very sorry for that, because I was sort of chatting with people in each room, and I was very, very happy with people and talking to them one-to-one. There's just one question I want to make sure if anyone's still struggling with creating an account, I'm going to have a session when I do one-to-one, like making sure that you actually be able to create your account, because I know it can be a painful problem. Sometimes you don't get the verification email in your sort of, when you try to sign up in your email. So if you still have a problem, can you write it in the Slack? I'm collecting the name of people who still like had a problem with the GitHub. It will be nice once we have our one-to-one session, you actually able to share screen. So if you can sort of connect from your laptop rather than from your iPhone, it will make it easier for me to debug. I see a lot of interesting and fascinating projects being added. I see a few people actually very familiar with GitHub, and they have like previous project that they created in GitHub. Very, very impressed with this sort of project that I'm seeing. And also the new repository that people created in the session. I would like to congratulate everyone, because GitHub is not really the easiest sort of skill you get in open science, and it's always very, very tricky. Even people who do computer science sometimes not familiar with GitHub. So you really creating a new repository and understanding all these jargons, that's a huge, and you should be really congratulating yourself for it. We already actually 19 minutes and 1 minute ahead of time. What I wanted from everyone, if you don't have the time, can you add in the last section the feedback? That would be very, very useful for me when I design also the next sort of session, which is going to be more sort of advanced. I wouldn't say advanced, but it's going to be more technical. I'm going to go into GitHub and play with GitHub more. Can you add what worked for you in this session? What didn't work? What would you like to change? What surprised you? You don't have to answer all of this, but I would like to know like exactly what you find it most useful, what we can improve in the next session. So I keep that in mind when I do design the next session for everyone. But I really thank you for coming to the session and for managing until the end. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm very, very happy. And thank you for Emmanuel and for Lamis for really facilitating the whole sessions and the training overall.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I think it was really amazing, and like for me, I'm talking about myself. I'm starting to feel like I'm, one of those computer geeks now, since I managed to open an account in GitHub and start a repository. So it's a really nice feeling. I think, Batool, do you have a few more minutes to take some questions? You're muted.
Yeah, definitely. I see already Samira.
Yeah. Go ahead, Samira.
So, thank you so much for this nice and interesting session. I really enjoyed it. But I just have a question, is that we've been looking for projects with similar interests, but didn't know where to share them on the Google Doc. So we just shared the link to our repositories, and we did not share the link regarding our interests. So is it a problem? And thank you.
No, not at all. I already saw that some people have been adding some links outside like the section that I created, but that's totally fine. And if you did not manage to add like more projects, it's totally fine. The purpose of the exercise is to make sure you familiarize yourself. So even after the session, try to just sort of experiment and play with GitHub and try to look around in it. Just be more familiar with it. That's like the reason or the purpose of the exercise. So it should be fine. Any other?
Thank you.
No worries.
So are there any more questions?
And if you still, after the session, you have a question, you could not raise it, feel free to message me in Slack. Also, you can message me directly, DM me if there's any question that you would still. Can I have a contact to continue working with you about? Yeah, I am in Slack. So, and this is also my email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you will find her in your trainees
Okay.
channel. You'd find Batool, but she also shared her email.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I'm going to have a session where I can help one-to-one. So that's very important that you're able actually to create your account and Yeah, and create a repository. So if you're still struggling with that, don't worry. Before going to the next session, I'll make sure.
Okay, is there any other question? So I think not. So really, thank you very much, Batool. It was a really exciting session, and I think the information was very new for most of us, but you managed to make it really easy to sort of digest. And as you said, all of us will be going and playing around with GitHub until we meet again in our level 2 session. So thank you very much, Batool, and thank you for all of those who attended. And as Batool said, okay, so you have Khadija. She said that this has been one of her most interesting sessions so far. Thank you, Batool. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I guess we could end the session now, and we are looking forward to see Batool again in 101 sessions and also in level 2 sessions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yes, yes.
So much,
Bye,
Batool,
Lamin.
Lamis, and Emmanuel, and members.